Hello everyone, we're back today to do the follow-up video for Getting Lost number 8, the Supreme Test. If you have not already seen that video or would like to refresh yourself on it, feel free to click the link right up here. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in.
As for who this leader may have been, that will be the topic of our next Getting Lost installment. For today, I will simply state that I believe ordering the executions of these soldiers was seen as the ultimate abuse of power, and that it resulted in the banishment of this leader.
So this first part that I wanted to address, it didn't actually come from anybody's comment. It was something that once I had finished the video and uploaded it, I kind of regretted not clarifying. And I did take the opportunity in my next video, Getting Lost number 9, to kind of briefly address it. And that is basically the idea that I'm suggesting is that the execution of the U.S. Army soldiers is what resulted in this leader in 1954 being banished. But if that were the case, it raises the question of why were they still around at the point when the time travelers have arrived. We don't see them on screen, but taking Richard's comments and Ellie's comments together, it definitely seems like there's still somebody around that's in charge above them. And considering that Richard says that the U.S. Army arrived a month ago, it does raise the question of how quickly after that did the leader order these executions. It may well have been over the course of a few weeks that the others, tried to negotiate with the army and have them leave before ultimately, it was decided that they needed to kill them. But regardless, the fact that these executions have taken place by the point the time travelers have arrived at, and yet the leader seems like they're still around, it does raise the question of why they wouldn't have been banished already. And the way I see it is that they had the more immediate problem of Jughead leaking that radiation that they were all trying to get figured out before, the idea of banishment would even be addressed.
Now, when Ben banishes Widmore, he cites Charles leaving regularly and having a daughter with an outsider as reasons for exiling him. And I'm sure as far as Ben was concerned, they were absolutely part of it. However, I feel the final deciding factor in Jacob and Richard's eyes was the moment Widmore used his power to order genocide.
See, I don't think the way that I said that there made that as clear as I could have made it. Which brings me to a comment from Ben Ward, who says, "You refer to Widmore getting banished for the purge, but doesn't Ben say to him on the pier that it's because he went off island and got Penny's mother pregnant?" So yeah, in this video, I don't think I did a great job of separating Richard and Jacob's reasons for casting a leader aside versus the others themselves, like the actual community that serve the leader, the reasons that they would want to have a leader replaced. I'm going to be talking about this a bit more in my next follow-up video to Getting Lost number 9. But the way I see it, according to this idea that Jacob kind of wants these leaders to be tested, to see if the power corrupts them, an important part of that would be to have Richard not step in and stop the leader or contradict anything that the leader has to say to their followers. And basically what I'm saying in this video is that it is only at the point where a leader uses their power to commit, such atrocities as genocide. It is only at that stage where Richard's loyalty would then go from the old leader to the replacement. That said, the community itself, I think, is on kind of a different page. I think Widmore and his style of leadership over those 15 years, I think he gradually lost support based on his leadership decisions. Something that I also believe happened with Ben during his time as leader, which I will be going into here in a minute. So when Ben meets Widmore on that dock as Widmore's being exiled, and Widmore, questions what gives Ben the right to exile him and to take that position from him, Ben is citing examples of decisions Widmore made that caused him to lose the support of, at least some of his followers. From their perspective, yeah, it was selfish for Widmore to, repeatedly leave the island to come and go, and to have had a daughter with an outsider, which they may have felt compromised the safety of the island. As for the idea that Widmore is being exiled specifically for having a daughter with an outsider, I feel like something that a lot of people don't consider, not just related to this topic of Widmore's banishment, but just in general with the idea of the timeline and what was going on, is Penny's age. She and Desmond meet in 1994 and begin their relationship. She's obviously driven to the monastery to pick up the wine. So the fact that she gets in a relationship with an adult man tells us that she's hopefully above the age of consent, which in the United Kingdom I believe is 16. And the fact that she's driving tells us that she should be at least 17 years old. Because again, based on my understanding from the internet, you have to be 17 to drive on your own in the United Kingdom. So if we acknowledge that she is at least 17 years old, this means she is at least as old as Daniel Faraday, her brother. So what this means is that at the absolute latest, Widmore conceived her with an outsider in 1977. But it's also perfectly possible that it happened even earlier than that, before he would have even been appointed leader. I do plan on eventually doing a video on Penny and who I think her mother may have been, and just, kind of what that whole situation was. Also, if there's anybody out there laughing at the idea that the Penny that we see in Desmond's flashbacks to the monastery is only 17 years old, I would first say that I'm just saying that's at least how old she would have to be. But then secondly, I wouldn't rule out that she is meant to be that young based on the fact that Faraday himself in 1996, for example, looks considerably older than 19 years old. Actors appearing much older than their characters are meant to be is just kind of one of those things you have to accept and suspend your disbelief on. I know when Ethan was retroactively revealed to have been 27 at the time of his death, that kind of raised some eyebrows. But yeah, even in real life, some people look a lot older than they are. Anyways, back to the main point. The way I see it, Widmore's followers, or at least a significant portion of them, were getting more and more fed up with his leadership. And then by the time that he orders the purge, that's kind of the last straw for them. Not to mention that once they kind of consolidate the manpower with the members of the Dharma Initiative that switch sides, I think that afforded them the first real opportunity to get rid of him without violence. Meanwhile, from Richard's perspective, I think Widmore ordering the purge was the point at which he stopped being loyal to Widmore and his commands, and thus could officially side with Ben as the new leader.
All of this is why Richard is looking to replace him with Locke by the end of Season 3.
So here's a good place to get into a couple of comments from Lethologica02, who says, Locke had already been anointed to be the next leader before Ben ordered the others to kidnap and kill the majority of the survivors and kill off the freighter mercenaries. So while those commands may have solidified Ben's lost leadership role, it doesn't seem to be the first reason for him being forced to step down. Ben said that Locke would be leader after he killed his father. Once Locke showed up in the others' camp with Cooper's body on his back, the others ignored Ben's orders and did what Locke said, except for Mikhail, until Locke was no longer around. So yeah, I wanted to get into this because I feel like similar to what I was just addressing about Widmore's gradual loss of support from his community. I feel like a similar thing happened with Ben. And Locke's arrival on the island certainly exacerbated that. And the point at which Ben stopped being recognized as leader and Locke became recognized instead, I do think that that is worth taking a closer look at. So yeah, similar to Charles, I think that in the years leading up to the crash of 815, Ben was losing support because his leadership decisions were becoming more and more compromised. He was making decisions based on selfish motivations, and oftentimes this was at the expense of his own people. We know that he lied to them about several things, one example being that the looking glass flooded. We know that he refused to let Juliet go home. It's unclear if she was the only one that he was doing that with or if there may have been others. I know at one point he implies that only certain members of the group are trusted to come and go. Then yeah, once 815 crashes, he starts ordering abductions, of people, including children. And it's not hard to imagine that not everyone in the community of the others would be on board with that. And so, yeah, by the time that Jack, Kate, and Sawyer are abducted and Juliet is making a video, saying that some of them want to change, I don't think she's making that up. I mean, obviously we know Richard is kind of hinting at that as well later in the season. So, yeah, I think there's a significant portion of Ben's people that are kind of fed up with his leadership at this point. And then when news gets back to their camp that a man who was paralyzed from the waist down crashed on the island and can now walk again, they interpret that to mean that this man must be really special. And it's unclear if anybody outside of Richard is aware of the fact that this man, went back in time and, prophesized his own eventual leadership. We know that Ethan encountered this man, in 2001, give or take, and that he claimed he was going to be a leader before disappearing in front of Ethan's eyes. Maybe Ethan told other people in the community about that. Maybe he didn't. Regardless, once they hear about Locke and his ability to suddenly walk, they get excited about the idea of this man, and it becomes clear to Ben fairly quickly that this man is a threat to his power. Not to mention that shortly after Ben finds out that he has a life-threatening tumor on his spine, when he's supposed to be this special leader, that there's no reason he should be getting cancer if this deity that he believes in, Jacob, has the ability to heal cancer. And if people aren't supposed to be getting sick on this island and yet he is, that doesn't look good. And then shortly after finding that out, another man that was paralyzed from the waist down is instantly healed. That doesn't look good. And it's one more reason for Ben to be jealous or threatened by Locke. So yeah, Ben knew even before he pretends to be Henry Gale and is captured and kept in the hatch, he knew before then that Locke was a legitimate threat to his power. And this is absolutely why I believe that he was attempting to undermine Locke from the very beginning of their relationship. And I also believe that is why Ben later brings Locke's dad to the island in the first place. What better way to undermine your opponent than bringing them face to face with the source of all their greatest insecurities and doubts? But if Ben is so threatened by Locke, why then does he invite him to, come with the others as they leave the barracks? Well, that's because Ben isn't healing from his surgery as quickly as he thinks he should be.
Was it immediate? It started the moment you got here? Yeah, and you were just walking. The feeling returned right after the crash. That day.
That's what immediate means, Ben. You're wondering why it hasn't happened for you. You're not recovering as fast as you'd like. How long's it been since Jack fixed you? A week? Now that I think about it, how did you get sick in the first place?
And it's clear to him that Locke has a better connection with the island in that regard, and he thinks that having him around, he'll be able to kind of benefit from that connection. And indeed, that turns out to be the case.
I believe I have you to thank for this, John.
Me?
A week ago, I couldn't move my toes. But the minute you showed up, I started to feel pins and needles.
So that's why he wants Locke around for a certain amount of time, is so that he can heal and recover. But what he promises Locke in order to get him to come with them is not the idea that he will become the leader. Instead, Ben is promising him answers to his questions.
I don't know how it happened. But you seem to have some communion with this island, John. And that makes you very, very important. You have no idea what you're talking about, of course, but in time you'll have a better understanding of things. So what do I want? I want to help you, John.
Why?
Because I'm in a wheelchair and you're not.
And yes, Ben does, say things to Locke like he's very, very important. But this is essentially the story of Locke's life. People are constantly preying on his need to feel important, special, chosen, wanted, etc. Ben, Locke's dad, the Man in Black, even Charles Widmore, all of these people exploit this weakness of John's and use it to manipulate him. But even while, kind of exploiting that with Locke, Ben still doesn't even dare to say or suggest the idea that Locke might lead his people. And then, once Ben's gotten what he wants, which is, the ability to walk again, that's when he introduces this new wrinkle to John.
I can't wait to show you what this island can do. But unfortunately, you're not ready, John.
No, I'm ready.
No, John, you're not. You're still crippled by the memories of the man you used to be before you came to this island. And you'll never be free until you release the hold that your father has over you. I can't show you anything until you can show me that you're ready and willing to be one of us. When people join us here on this island, they need to make a gesture. That's why you're going to have to kill your father.
He says that he can't give John the answers that he promised him until he kills his father. Something Richard later says Ben knew John wouldn't do. I do also think that it's worth noting that because Widmore ordered his people to carry out the purge, Ben was put in a position where he had to either let his father die or kill him himself. Obviously, we know that he chose the latter, and I think that's another part of why Ben tells Locke that he has to do this. I think Ben is bitter about the fact that Locke is being looked at as a potential replacement to him, and he wants Locke to have to at least pay the same heavy cost that Ben had to pay to become leader, that being patricide. Anyways, so Ben has what he wants. He's recovered for the most part. So he leaves Locke behind with his dad and, tells him not to bother following them unless he kills his father, which Ben's fairly confident he won't do. Then when Locke does catch up with them and he has his father's body on his back, it kind of shocks Ben. And Locke then begins to really start publicly challenging Ben's authority. The most extreme example of which is when he starts beating Mikhail in front of everyone. And this is the one part where I would agree that Ben looks to Richard and Tom for support, and he is basically ignored.
Since when do you explain yourself to him? An outsider.
Tom?
Richard!
But Locke does not order these people to do anything, and neither technically does Ben at this point. And I think if the others had stopped recognizing Ben as their leader entirely and had now been regarding Locke as their leader, then I think someone, particularly Richard, would have warned Locke that, hey, Ben doesn't actually talk to Jacob. There's a good chance that that's not where he's taking you. The fact that no one does do this, to me, suggests that Ben is still the leader and nobody is directly going against his leadership.
We have to go now.
Ben's not going anywhere with you.
Excuse me?
He and I are going to see Jacob.
So yeah, Ben takes Locke out to the cabin. He puts on that little show, which obviously kind of takes a turn that Ben wasn't expecting. And from his perspective, he thinks that Jacob spoke to Locke. You know, this man that never spoke to Ben decided to speak to this person that he's so threatened by. That kind of pushes Ben over the edge, and that's when he tries to kill Locke. He goes back to the camp, and then that's when he orders his people to go and kidnap all of the women. And if they get in the way, kill any of the men. Richard, of course, is appalled by this. And though we don't see it, I'm sure there are other members in the community that also would not be a fan of this idea. And then, when that mission that he sent them on results in all 10 of them dying, not to mention it exposes the fact that he lied about the looking glass and gets Mikhail, Bonnie, and Greta all killed, it's really no wonder that once Ben gets captured by the 815ers, his people don't really have any interest in saving him at that point. That they're kind of fed up with him at this stage. And are in no way compelled by loyalty to try and free him.
How do I know you're not going to run off and meet your people first chance you get?
If my people still wanted me down, they would have stormed this camp long ago.
But even so, I still don't think that the official change in leadership has occurred yet. I think officially Ben is still the leader. And when in the season 4 finale, he reaches out to them, you know, with the mirror, and asks them to come and save him from the mercenaries. As I said in this video, I believe the condition of that he was kind of aware of was that if they do that, he then has to step aside. He has to leave the island willingly, and Locke will then be the leader. And I think at this stage, he is more willing to agree to that than he would have been previously, not just because he's more desperate with the mercenaries coming after him, but also because he actually does want to leave the island in order to get revenge on Widmore for Alex's death. And so, yeah, it is then in the Orchid Station that Ben tells Locke, okay, you go back up there and they'll be waiting for you. They'll fill you in on what you need to know, and then they'll follow your every word. I believe that it is only at that point that the leadership has switched over. And it is indeed, once again, because Ben has abused his power and used it to order mass murder, basically.
After this, down in the Orchid Station, he tells Locke that Richard is waiting for him, and that he, Ben, isn't allowed to come back to the island.
So I'd like you to get on the elevator, John, and go back up. Richard and my people will be waiting 2 miles east of the Orchid. Waiting for me. Ready, willing, and able to share what they know. Then they will follow your every word.
And this brings me to the last comment I think I'm going to address in this video, and that is from Rochelle23, who says, so do you think that Ben turned the wheel because he was banished? I saw this act like a sacrifice from Ben in order to save his island, a sacrifice because he knew that it would have been very difficult to come back. So yeah, I kind of hinted at that in the last section. At this point, he actually does want to leave. he wants to go and find Widmore, and he wants to exact his revenge on him.
Wherever you go, Widmore, he'll find you.
Not if I find him first.
Now, Ben being Ben, I don't think that he ever intended on never coming back to the island. Even though it does become clear in season 5 when he comes back that he's not welcome back. Richard, when he sees that Ben's back on the island, he questions what Ben is doing there.
What's he doing here?
He helped me get back.
Also in the season 5 finale, when the Man in Black as Locke is kind of making the case to Ben about why he should want to kill Jacob, he lists Ben being banished as one of those reasons. And Ben, doesn't react in a way that suggests he doesn't also believe that is what happened to him.
And your reward for those sacrifices? You were banished. And you did all this in the name of a man you'd never even met. So the question is, Ben, why the hell wouldn't you want to kill Jacob?
Now, this is kind of tangential, but something that keeps coming up a lot in the comment sections of some of my more recent videos is, why does Ben tell Locke that whoever moves the island can't come back?
Whoever moves the island can never come back. Goodbye, John.
At the start of that scene, Locke is furious with Ben for having killed Kimi, knowing that it would lead to the deaths of the people on the freighter. Locke is also under the impression that he is going to move the island as he is the one that was instructed to do so. But as I've just said, Ben has his own selfish reasons for wanting to be the one to move it, as well as he needs to leave the island because he's now been banished. But instead of explaining to Locke that he has been banished already because of his actions and his people not wanting him to be leader anymore, he instead presents his impending exile as a noble sacrifice that he's making so that Locke can become leader. And considering Locke goes from being furious at Ben and yelling at him to shaking his hand and them essentially wishing each other well, I'd say this is once again a well-calculated, well-executed move on Ben's part. I think he did a great job of manipulating John yet again. So getting back around to Rochelle's original question, I think Ben turned the wheel for several reasons. He did it because the island did need to be moved and protected from Widmore. And from Ben's perspective, Jacob is the one that said this should be done. He also did it because he had reached an agreement with Richard and his people to leave the island willingly. And turning the wheel would be one quick way to do that. And lastly, he did it because he wanted to leave the island to exact revenge on Widmore. All right, I think that's everything for this one. I've just got one more that I'm trying to get out within this week. So hopefully you guys will see that pretty soon. If you enjoy these at all, please do come back for that one.
Oh, hello there. If you're like me, you can't get enough of Lost. So if you'd like to be notified when more videos like this one arrive, just click right up here to subscribe. In the meantime, if you'd like to check out other videos like this one, just click right up here. Or, if you'd like to check out a fun talk show filmed in an abandoned Dharma broadcast station, just click right over here. And as always, remember that this channel is like the island. It wants you to come back.